we are so delighted today to have this important and powerful cadre of people. It's going to be a powerful day, and it's all about finance, cultivating finance, community finance, and cultivating community power. And so we have some privileged people, and others will be joining us, but we are talking about business, talking about growing business, and talking about growing community. And as a start, I always like to lead into just a simple prayer that invokes our spirits and invokes our power and puts us into a place of vision. So if you don't mind, let us pray. We thank you, dear Lord, for this time, this place, these people, our community, what you have invoked us to do. Give us the power to succeed and succeed magnificently. We count on you, and we know that you've always been victorious in everything we do. We bless and praise your name. Holy name, Jesus, amen. All right. We have the good pleasure today to have our keynote speaker, and she is the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker. And of course, Madam C.J. Walker was the first African-American millionaire, wealthy, and she's always led. She was leader of our community effort, and she challenged and faced tremendous obstacles to get to that standard. And we're so delighted to have a great-great-granddaughter, Miss Alelia Bundles. She's on with us today. She's written a book, and I want she's going to give us a previous review of who and background for that. And take ears peeled, eyes glued, and give a round of applause. Welcome to Miss Alelia Bundles. Please, thank you.
Well,
glad to have you.
Thank you so much, and really glad to be a part of your Women's History Month celebration. It's always a pleasure for me to talk about Madam Walker, and especially to talk about Madam Walker with people who are involved in business, because she was very much an entrepreneur. And because people have, they may know a little bit about Madam Walker. Sometimes what they know isn't exactly accurate, or they may have seen the Self-Made Netflix series and been inspired, but that's not really exactly historically accurate. So I always like to give a little bit of background on who she actually was. So I'm going to do maybe 10 minutes or so. I'm really fortunate that my family saved a lot of documents. And part of the reason I'm able to tell her story with such accuracy is that I do have literally tens of thousands of her letters and business records. And that is very unusual for a woman-owned company or for a company that is owned by a person of color. But for a company founded in 1906 to have all of these records and to have them digitized really does make it possible to tell the story. And I say that especially to those of you who are in business now, because record keeping can be really boring. But it is really important to just to do your taxes and do your business. But it's really important for your legacy and for your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren, so they can tell your story in the way that I've been able to tell Madam Walker's story. So I'm going to click share screen. And if we're lucky, it will happen. Can everybody see the purple slide?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
That's always the moment of truth on Zoom, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you want to make sure the pictures can be seen. But again, it's just a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you and to talk about Madam Walker. And I hope provide a little bit of inspiration for those of you who are facing the joys and the challenges of entrepreneurship. So Madam C.J. Walker, this is the picture that most people are familiar with, taken in 1913, as she was really on the rise. But she was born in Delta, Louisiana, on the same plantation where her parents and older siblings had been enslaved. She was born Sarah Breedlove in December of 1867. By the time she was 7 years old, both parents had died. She moved in with an older sister named Lavinia. And she later said in many of her speeches that she said, I got married at 14 to get a home of my own to escape the treatment of my cruel brother-in-law. So we know there was some kind of abuse. She didn't elaborate on that, but whatever it was sufficient that she married a man named Moses McWilliams. Very little is known about him. but they had their only child, Lelia, who I'm named after, when she was 17. And then when Sarah was 20, Moses died. She knew she wasn't moving back in with her sister and brother-in-law, but fortunately for her, her older brothers had moved up the Mississippi River from Delta, Louisiana to St. Louis as part of one of the earliest migrations of African Americans leaving the plantations of the South. They'd settled in St. Louis around 1878, and they had become barbers at a time when Black men dominated the barbering trade. Most people don't really know that, but Black men dominated the barbering trade during the late 1800s. And her brothers were members of St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church, which was near their barbershop. And it was really the women of the church, the more middle-class women, the school teachers, the community leaders, the women who were part of a national organization called the National Association of Colored Women, who began to give Sarah Breedlove, the washerwoman, a vision of herself as something other than an illiterate person. So she began to aspire to a better life for her daughter and for herself. So that by the time she died in 1919, at age 51, she was living in a mansion in the wealthiest community in America. She had become an entrepreneur, a pioneer of the modern hair care industry, a philanthropist. And while some people will say she's the first African-American millionaire, she's actually the first self-made American woman millionaire. There were other Black men who were millionaires before Madam Walker. There were some white women who had either inherited their millions or married somebody who was a millionaire. But because we have the records, we're able to document that at the time of her death, she was a millionaire. And I will just use this moment. I just saw a really interesting, a very nicely done video on Essence's social media space. And they said that Madam Walker was the first Black philanthropist. Well, no, she was not the first Black philanthropist. When you think about it. She was born in 1867. Black folks had been entrepreneurs and some had been freed and people were giving in churches and giving circles. So she was a key Black philanthropist, but not the first. In 1917, you see her here at her first convention of her sales agents in Philadelphia. She's there in the center. To her left is her attorney, F.B. Ransom. To the right is the manager of her factory, Alice Kelly. She always hired really smart people. You know, one key for Madam Walker's life is that she had a really strong executive team. That was a real key to her success. And I think we know that that's still key to success. But at this convention, she'd started her company in 1906. And now 11 years into business, she had trained thousands of women. She traveled all over the United States, Central America, and the Caribbean, recruiting women who otherwise would have been sharecroppers and farmers and maids and laundresses and cooks, who now had their own businesses, who she was teaching them how to become economically independent before women had the right to vote, and when 90% of African Americans lived in the South and most in the rural South on farms. But people were becoming more urban, and she was really answering that need and that desire for more sophistication. At this convention, which happened 2 years before Mary Kay was born, Madam Walker gave prizes like Mary Kay, but she gave prizes not just to the women who sold the most products or who recruited the most new agents, but also to the women who had contributed the most to charity. This idea of community leadership was very much a part of her mission and her vision. And in her keynote, she said to the women, I want you to understand that your first duty is to humanity. I want others to look at us and realize that we care not just about ourselves, but about others. And at the end of the convention, the women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson, urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. The convention had happened just a few weeks after the horrible 1917 East St. Louis massacre, when dozens of African Americans were attacked and killed because of resentment from some of the white factory workers in St. Louis. And this was happening all over the country. Lynching was horrible. And as you know, finally, Congress seems to be ready to pass this anti-lynching bill, which the president hopefully will soon sign. But Madam Walker was very conscious of being both economically independent, encouraging her agents to do the same, have some corporate and social responsibility, and to strive for social justice. This is where she was born, in Delta, Louisiana, the cabin. And then you can see it was right on the river. The little yellow circle at the bottom is the Bernie plantation where she was born. And this particular map comes from the National Archives because that plantation was the staging area for Grant's siege of Vicksburg, a very key battle during the Civil War. And here, after she moved to St. Louis and she was a member of the choir, she was a member of St. Paul AME Church, her hair began to fall out. And you can see in the center, her hair is, she's got bald patches. And then you can see that her wonderful hair grower, her initial product, really did work. And it was really key at a time when most Americans didn't have indoor plumbing or electricity. So hygiene was very different. I know we don't want to think about that too much, but people didn't bathe as often and they washed their hair even less often. And as a result, they had very horrible dandruff and scalp infections. So her idea was to wash your hair more often, to use this ointment like Vaseline with sulfur that healed the sores on your scalp, allowed the hair to grow back. Remember, she had learned a bit about hair care from her brothers who were barbers. For a while, she was a sales agent for Annie Malone, who would later become her competitor. And then when she moved from St. Louis to Denver in 1905, right before she married C.J. Walker, her third husband, she was a maid, a cook for a man who owned the largest pharmacy west of the Mississippi. And this formula that she used and that Annie Malone used had been used for decades, really centuries, by pharmacists and by doctors. It was a very simple formula in an era before aspirin and penicillin. But her genius was marketing it, was being charismatic, was surrounding herself with very smart people, was recruiting agents who were leaders. By 1910, she moved to Indianapolis. She's here driving her Model T with her niece and her bookkeeper behind her niece on the left, and then the manager of her factory, Alice Keller. Soon after she moved to Indianapolis, there was a big campaign to build a YMCA, a Black YMCA. The YMCAs were still segregated. And here she is at the dedication of the YMCA. Booker T. Washington was the main speaker. And there's a longer story that maybe I'll tell during Q&A just so that we can get through the slides. But this was a key moment because when she had appeared at his 1912 convention, he would not let her speak, but they had eventually had détente. And so here they are together and he was a guest in her home. But Elizabeth, you can remind me to tell that story a little later.
Okay, I will.
Here she is with her employees, again, surrounded herself with a really capable expert team. She is in the center here. She spent much time on the road recruiting agents. She's here with some of her Ohio agents. And she was always ahead of the curve with technology. This is 1912. She's driving an electric car. She also was, she paid a lot of attention to media. She advertised extensively in the Black press. She loved movies. It was silent movies at the time. But she also, when she did lectures, she had illustrated lectures with a device called a stereopticon, which was glass slides projected through a projector with a light source. That was that day's version of PowerPoint. This is her advertisement, one of her advertisements. She was advertising all over the world. And then her daughter had been managing the Pittsburgh office after she and her husband moved to Indianapolis in 1910. And her daughter, Alelia, persuaded her that they needed to have a presence in Harlem. So she was in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't have enough going on for her. And so they bought a building in Harlem on 136th Street where the Countee Cullen Library now stands, then bought the building next door and had Bertner Tandy, the first licensed Black architect in New York, design this double townhouse. So the first floor was the salon, the basement was the beauty school, and then upstairs their living quarters. In 1916, Madam Walker moved her personal residence from Indianapolis to New York. She lived for a short time in the Harlem townhouse and then commissioned the same architect, Bertner Tandy, to design this mansion for her in Irvington, New York, the wealthiest community in America. This is the convention of her in 1924 of her sales agents, though she died in 1919. I showed this just to remind me of her political activism. After that convention in Philadelphia with her sales agent, she was part of a committee, the executive committee of the NAACP's New York branch, that organized the silent protest parade to protest that East St. Louis massacre. And so this parade happened silently up Fifth Avenue in New York, really a show of force, and not unlike the kinds of demonstrations that we saw after George Floyd's murder a couple of years ago. In 1927, the Walker Company built this building, the block-long Flatiron building, with the factory, with the corporate offices, with a theater, a drugstore, a beauty salon, the NAACP offices, a doctor's office, dentist office. But this was kind of the center of Black life. It, like Madam Walker's home, Villa Lawaro, is now a National Historic Landmark. And then we have our new products that we just introduced about a month and a half ago, Madam by Madam C.J. Walker, that we've done in partnership with Sundial Brands and with Walmart. So it's sold exclusively now at Walmart. And I'll just leave you with this before we go to questions. Madam Walker said that people often asked her the secret to her success. And she would say to them, there is no royal flower-strewn path to success. And if there is, I have not found it. For whatever success I have attained has been the result of much hard work and many sleepless nights. I got my start by giving myself a start. So don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. You have to get up and make them for yourself. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
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 Amazing. What a story.
You know,
What a
we have Juliet Adams, and she helped us pick Madam C.J. Walker as our inspiration for the Women History Month. And I'm so pleased to see her because, you know, it starts with a thought, and then here we have you. What a presentation. Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
That was fabulous. Thank you so much.
Any questions? We open up the floor to questions.
Yes,
I'm sure.
and Linda had a question in the chat. So let's go around the room and start with anyone that has a question. Or would you like to do a conclusion before?
No, I'm ready for questions.
Okay, awesome. I'll start with our most powerful woman, Mrs. Wooten, Ernestine Wooten, and Nancy. Would you like to have a question?
No, but I do want to make a comment. It makes me proud that her great granddaughter is holding up her legacy and sharing the wonders of what she was and still is to us as a strong Black woman who was able to do what she was able to do under the times of what was happening. And it's just humbling to know that you are doing that. And I want to thank you for that. And just say, please continue to do so.
Well, thank you, Sarar. And I know that you have some big steps to follow too.
Yes, I do.
Well, Sarah, I would like to say that in listening to you, there was a lot of unity in your family. And I always say in unity, there is strength. And I'm just so happy that we have young people still coming along to help us, to help our young people to advance and make progress.
Well, you know, and I so agree with you. I think that you know, again, for those people who saw the Netflix series, you know, it kind of focused, it kind of made up this kind of conflict between two women and made it into a cat fight, which for me was kind of the opposite of the point of Madam Walker's life, because it was really those women of the church. And we know how powerful that sisterhood can be, where they saw somebody who was a washerwoman, who did not have a lot of formal education, and they saw a spark. And they really felt it was their mission to embrace her. And it was those women who helped her get to the next level. And then once she was successful, those were people who remained her friends. And she modeled some of her conventions on what they did. But it was that that strong sisterhood in the missionary society, in the choir, within the church that really, helped her move herself forward. And like you, so you're 97, I will be 70 in a few weeks, a couple of months. And like you, I am looking at the young folks who are giving so much energy, and they still have a lot of fight. When I graduated from high school a little more than 50 years ago, doors were starting to open up for women and for African Americans with affirmative action, and professional schools and corporate life and all of those things. And I just, I thought, well, we finally open these doors, and they're going to stay open. And we see that there are some people trying to close those doors. So I wish that we were leaving the younger folks, more open doors, but they're still going to have to fight. But I think they have the energy.
Mhm. I have a question that has to do with it, if you'll speak to it a little bit. She was a pioneer. There were none like her, nothing to compare her to. And, and she didn't rest on, okay, I don't care, there's not an example for me to follow. I will take up the mantle and follow myself, basically. And, and I think that's so essential at this time, and any idea what led her to the pioneer spirit? She had the mantle and she just moved on it.
Yeah.
She just moved on it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. There's nobody like her, but I do think that because of the way we learn history, a lot of the women who really were doing really incredible things are no longer well known.
Mhm.
When I started doing research on Madam Walker in the 1970s, most people, if they knew anything, they were, oh yeah, she's the woman who had something to do with hair, but they didn't know all these other dimensions. And she actually did have some role models, maybe not as a millionaire businesswoman, but there were this National Association of Colored Women. These were women who were leaders in the NAACP. Some had been educated in Europe. They were organizers. They were organizing the anti-lynching movement. Ida B. Wells was a friend of hers. Certainly Ida B. Wells was a person who is, like no other. So there were people who were leaders in that way. And Mary McLeod Bethune is another, who founded a school. So there were other women. There was a small group of them, but there were others from whom she got inspiration and from whom she got strength. But she was singular in the way that she developed her agents, and that she made women feel comfortable about being economically independent. She understood that it was, that women wanted hair care products. Yes, that's where she started, and that was kind of the base. But she realized as she recruited these women and as she had conventions, that what they really needed was education and financial independence, so that they could buy homes, so that they could educate their children, so that they could contribute to their communities. So it was this, I think, this combination of being inspired by the example she saw within the African Methodist Episcopal Church, looking at these Black women who were organized nationally and who were leaders, and then taking some of that own innate spirit, because some of it is just who she was, the genius of Madam Walker.
I think the selection of the photos in your presentation, were fabulous. And that, because here we have women, we've lost the fight, I think. And when you see the scene of the marching on, in New York, you realize that we are still in the fight, and we need to continue to fight and inspire our young people. Because, we've done hair shows, and I've worked hard with these hair salons, and I tell them that you've got to keep it up, because, it's, and so I think I applaud you for that presentation. And I think even her car and, the vision, and when you think of how much she accomplished back in the day, we cannot make excuses. We always say, oh, we have a weak start, and we don't, because, people like her, laid the foundation. And so we have no excuses, and we need to press on. So I love everything. The presentation was brilliant.
Thank you.
So we have Neri, And Neri is a pioneer in her own way, and I just met her. So Neri, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do, and if you have a question about the presentation.
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for having me on this panel this morning. It was great to be amongst such wonderful people and seeing the history of CJ Madam Walker. And I come from the art space. We have an art gallery in Brooklyn on Myrtle Avenue, and we were just had an exhibit at Chelsea Market. And what we do is we go around and we find young African-American artists who we can represent in the art space who are not getting their opportunity to show their work. So we pair up with Chelsea Market to put their art in there so people can get a look at what they do. So that's the space that I come from. And I have a team that I work with who we work well together, and we do a great job at just trying to reach out to the community and keep everyone involved.
Very good.
Great.
I want to make this point. I've heard of Madam Walker, Madam CJ Walker is how I defined her, but now it's so interesting after your presentation, I can call her Madam Walker as if I know her personally.
Yeah.
You know, it totally transitioned this
Yes.
and the perspective of who she was and the fights she fought and won.
And
You
one.
know,
Right.
and the fight she fought and won. Now,
Yeah.
you know, when you're, and it kind of reflects on the aspect of if you're thinking of a particular fight you're in, or a fight that you might have to engage, and you know, and you think about leaders like this who didn't question, you know, the fight. It was just the need to do it. You know, it's just, her to write a letter to President Woodrow Wilson and to tell him that he should do something to stop the lynchings, you know, big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when the President Wilson got the letter, who is this? What did she do?
Yeah.
And she's writing a letter to me to stop lynchings in America. You know, and I can only imagine the confrontations or the letter, the staff and what they might have said to, well, how will we respond? It's the right thing to do. I don't know his position on those things.
Yeah.
But
No, Woodrow Wilson was notoriously a racist
is that right? Okay.
and not at all interested in supporting lynching. He was worried about, you know, he was, you know,
He's
kind of a
different.
Donald Trump person on that front.
He's
But you know,
different.
in the way that Ms. Wooten said, this sort of the collective action, she was part of a group of Harlem leaders. So James Weldon Johnson, a name that we may not, you know, many people don't know now, but he was in the leadership of the NAACP. And where people will know him is that he and his brother wrote the Negro National Anthem, Lift Every Voice. But he was a diplomat. He was really a Renaissance man, a novelist, a composer, a leader, political leader. But he was one of the people, W.E.B. Du Bois. There were others who had all signed this petition that they took to Washington to present to Wilson. And there was, you know, Wilson was unreceptive. They thought they had a scheduled meeting with him. And, you know, at the last minute, when he saw this, you know, really dignified group of Black people arriving at the White House, all of a sudden he was unavailable. But they then did go up to Capitol Hill, and Dyer, who was the congressman whose anti-lynching bill was first proposed, I think in 1918, and is kind of the inspiration for the bill that's the Emmett Till bill that's now, you know, finally getting ready to pass. They met with Dyer, who was sympathetic to their concerns.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
I
was
a
bringing you on
question.
next. Let me introduce you
Okay.
first, quick.
Okay.
So Juliet is the inspiration for today's session because she wanted us to do, we did Frederick Douglass for our African Black History Month, and we picked you for Women History Month. So there you go. Go ahead, Juliet.
Okay, thank you. And really, it is a pleasure. I first met you, it's about 16 years ago when you did a presentation with the Caribbean community. And therefore, I recently published a 5-book series. One deals with women and the other economic power, in which both feature Madam C.J. Walker. What I discovered from my research is that I have appointed her, crowned her as the female brand of capitalism, and that's where I'm running with her. My question to you is, what does the Black community need to do to promote the legacy of those who have fought the fight? There's a dire need for it, and the weakness seems that there's not a structure and a framework for the younger generation to carry the mantle. There's an urgent need for it to be done now. What needs to be done right now so that is done? They know how to do it.
Well, I mean, I think that, she was a capitalist, but she was also about corporate responsibility and social justice. And those things for me with her go hand in hand. She cared as much about the welfare of others. And I have seen some people try to, appropriate her and say, well, if she could do it, then why can't we do it? And people shouldn't get any help. But she had an infrastructure and she had support when she was struggling. So I think that she was very empathetic and sympathetic to those who were struggling because she herself had struggled and others supported her. So I just always like to make that clear that, I don't like for her to be kind of appropriated by folks who say like, no public assistance, no, we're not helping people. And it is kind of frustrating to see that sometimes we think a younger generation may not be stepping up. I actually feel that there are some young people who are stepping up, but I do think this structural racism that we have observed in America is a big problem. It does not absolve us of personal responsibility. But just an example, something that was very important to Madam Walker was home ownership. And she invested in real estate. She encouraged her agents to invest in real estate, to buy homes, to create their communities. And they were doing that. She was actually trying to build some affordable housing. But what she didn't anticipate is that federal housing policies and banking policies would redline Black neighborhoods. So that if a Black neighborhood, if people were buying homes in 1910 and 20 and 30 and 40, they couldn't get loans if they needed an equity loan to fix the roof. And literally, as you've probably seen, there are maps that were drawn by the federal government in the 1930s that allowed banks to say, this is an undesirable neighborhood. All they had to do was have a Black person living in it. It didn't matter what their economic status was, but we don't have to lend money. And over time, those neighborhoods deteriorated, and then highways were built through the neighborhoods because, well, those people don't keep up their homes, but it was an unlevel playing field. And then to add insult to injury, after World War II, when the GIs came back, which was my father's generation, they weren't able to take the same advantage of these building of these new suburbs. We were not allowed in the suburbs because of covenants, so that a Black veteran coming back could buy a house, let's say for $20,000 in 1950. A white veteran could buy a house for $20,000, but because that Black neighborhood was redlined, that house might be worth $50,000 or $60,000 now, where the white veteran's house may be worth $1 million in the New Jersey suburbs. So I'm just saying there are things with discriminatory practices that have made it more difficult for our communities. And that does not absolve us personally, but there are reasons why this happens. And that's, I think, why there is so much fear about teaching accurate history, because it then makes people feel responsible. Well, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. I just want people to recognize that and fix it.
Well, I want to comment, but let me move along. So Lisa Baker is just fantastic. She's a business coach, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. And if you have a question or a comment for Madam C.J. Walker.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Lisa Baker. I am the founder of Ascentum, and I help high-performing professionals to really level up. That means I help them get connected, help them get promoted, and get wealth so that they can live the life that they dreamed about. And I am just so honored to be here today. As I was listening to you talk, the question that came to my mind is, I wonder what Madam C.J. Walker would think about everything that's happening today, given how hard she fought to achieve all the things that she did, all the help that she gave to lift others up, to truly help them level up as well. And seeing where we are, we've come a long way, sure, but still we struggle. Women are earning, 63 cents for every dollar that a man makes, all those things. And so that was really the question that came to my mind. I wonder what she might think.
Well, I have no idea for sure, but I will just sort of based on what I know her goals and interests were. I mean, she'd have to be just totally amazed at the number of Black women who have their own businesses, who have become millionaires, who are corporate CEOs, who are in leadership, in politics, in arts, in the full spectrum. So that would be amazing for her. I think she would be pushing hard for there to be more money invested in women-owned businesses. At this point, it's like 1 or 2%. Venture capital is not flowing to women-owned businesses. She would be frustrated about that. I'm sure she'd be very annoyed that this anti-lynching bill has still not been signed into law. But I think that she would be, one of the things that as I began to do this, I'll just put this in perspective. I grew up in a household where both of my parents were entrepreneurs. They both worked in the hair care business. My mother was vice president of the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. My dad worked for the company for a year or two after my parents married, but he was hired away to be president of a company called Summit Laboratories, another Black-owned hair care company. And so I grew up with entrepreneurs, but the story of Madam Walker was, Madam Walker founded a hair care company. My mother went to work in that building, but I sort of knew what everybody else knew. But when I really began to use my journalism skills, because I worked in network television news for 30 years, and my historian skills, and I discovered all these other dimensions, what really drew me to her was her activism, was her use of her platform, of her business, to be involved with social justice causes and to be a patron of the arts. So I think for me, she's Black Lives Matter 1.0. She was a corporate executive and a business owner who was committed to making things better in her community. So she would be pushing for companies to be doing the right thing.
Wow.
Amazing. I mean, I'm just please, those of you who have the little chatter, please mute so that we don't hear the outside additional noise. But I'm amazed. I mean, I used to live in Irvington, right around the corner from her mansion. They're right there on Broadway. And I mean, and we took a walk one day and we walked right by her house. And it said Madam C.J. Walker. And I had no idea at the time, the true story and legacy. But I mean, it's amazing to me. And I knew someone else had owned the house, but so great to hear that Mr. Dennis, through Essence Magazine now, owns it through a partnership and a nonprofit. I didn't know that at that time. But I mean, speak to us if you could of the importance of, what was her play on legacy? What was her play on the magnitude of time, and how big she got?
Well, thank you for asking that. I think she was really very conscious of legacy and how she developed that. It's just when you think about her saying to her agents, your first duty is to humanity. How had this woman who had been born on born on a plantation, cotton
Yeah,
plantation, with parents who had been enslaved and older siblings who had been enslaved. How did she wrap her mind around thinking about something like that, so that she was inspiring others? But I think she did have the benefit of seeing some things along the way as a child.
Right.
Her family minister in Delta, Louisiana, had been elected a state senator, a Black state senator in Louisiana during Reconstruction. So while that may not have been a conscious thing for her, she had seen Black people in leadership roles. She had seen the leadership of the AME Church. She had seen the leadership of the NAACP and of the National Association of Colored Women. So she knew that individuals with collective action could make a difference. And I just think she began to feel some of her own impact as she was training other women. She would go from city to city and she would hold a lecture, with her stereopticon, with her illustrated lecture. And she'd talk about not just her products, but Black people in educational institutions and businesses. And then she would have a smaller group, maybe 8 to 10 women who she was trying to recruit them. They would meet in a smaller room and she would talk about her products and she would say what it's like to be an agent. And she would pay attention to who asked the best questions, who did the other women gravitate towards, who showed leadership abilities, and she would make that person her lead agent. So she was conscious of who represented her. And then that picture of the cabin where she was born, she actually had that picture taken. She knew the power of images. And she was on a business trip and she visited her birthplace and she had a photographer take that picture because she knew, like Abraham Lincoln, born in a log cabin, she knew that symbolism was important and she wanted to tell that story. The fact that she put her own image on her product containers was revolutionary for 1906. For a Black woman to say, I'm going to put my image there, because there were other white-owned companies that were, sort of caricaturing Black women. And she was conscious of that. And then when she built the mansion, she said, some people criticized her as like, why are you showboating and raising, doing all of this? And she said, I am doing this because I want young Black boys and girls to see what they can achieve.
Wow.
So you're absolutely right. She was conscious of legacy, but I think also had it in perspective that it wasn't about just self-aggrandizement, but it was about what she could do to inspire others.
That's amazing.
People need pictures. They need to see it done. And when they see it done, they have the power and the magnitude to do it themselves. That's right. Amazing.
We have Linda Thompson. Linda, can we see you? Linda, going once, going twice. Okay. So moving along, we have our next segment, which is our wellness segment, and please stay because you've got products that you're launching as well. And tell us about your organization and about these new products that you're launching.
And Booker T. Washington, don't forget that story.
All right. Yeah. So
well, I'm going over, but it's been just such a joy to be with you. I can tell the Booker T. Washington story, the quick version, which is Madam Walker had given this $1,000 gift for the building fund in 1911, pledged it. She went to Booker T. Washington's 1912 National Negro Business League convention. She wanted to speak. He wouldn't give her permission to speak. One of her friends stood up and said, we should hear from her. And he said, we're talking about lifetime membership. And then he called on one of her neighbors from Indianapolis who wasn't discussing lifetime membership. And she was very frustrated. But on the third and final day of the convention, as the last banker was completing his report, Madam Walker stood at her seat, looked toward Washington at the podium and said, surely you're not going to shut the door in my face. I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South. From there, I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the kitchen. And from there, I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations. And I have built my own factory on my own ground. The next year, he invited her back as a keynote speaker. And then you saw them at the dedication of the Y where she
Wow.
sent her chauffeur to pick him up at the
Uh,
train station, and he was a guest in her home. So she
Mm.
spoke up, but she figured out a way to navigate a friendship, and they were good friends by the time he died.
Mm.
And then just Elizabeth Nelson, thank you so much for the chance to speak with people. So people can come to my websites, and I think you all are going to post it, but it's aliliabundles.com and madamcjwalker.com. And our products are in Walmart, and you can go to our product website at madambymcjw.com. I've
Sure.
written 4 books. On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker is the nonfiction book that others have said is the definitive biography of Madam Walker. And I'm almost finished with a 5th book, which is the first major biography of her daughter.
And
So
we
thank you
can't-
so much.
well,
Thank you. We're
stay-
not done,
We're
though.
not done.
We're not done,
We
but
have
we're not
one-
done working with you, though, too. You
Yeah,
know?
we have
Yeah.
one more person, Linda Thompson. Linda, we can see you.
If we-
Yeah, Linda, can we turn your
I'm-
sound up?
I'd like to
Yeah,
hear from Grover, too. Grover,
Yes.
you got some things to
yes,
say. Just
yes.
comment.
Go ahead.
Sarah, please put your information in the chat, because I
Yes.
would like to make contact with you for our chapter.
Great.
I can give that to you, Nancy. I will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm,
Yes,
okay.
Linda.
I just want to say that I really enjoyed your presentation. She was an amazing woman, and I really admired the endurance that she had, because I'm sure with all the struggles, she went through a whole lot, but that didn't stop her. And I love those pictures, and I love that little car, the car that she used to
The
drive.
car was really good.
That was
Electric-
the
an
electric car.
Yeah.
Yeah, so nothing is new under the sun, right?
Right?
Right,
So
right.
I really enjoyed that. And you did mention that her products, are they at Walmart? She now has products at Walmart, and
The products are at Walmart and walmart.com. And I just put the website madambymcjw.com in the chat.
okay, well, wonderful. I will check that out. And I am Linda Thompson. I am an author of 2 books, and I'm just amazed at the inspiration that she still have going through the world today. And thank you so much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So before we finish the segment, Grover, anybody else has a comment, question? Reginald, would you like to say something before I wrap the session up? And I want to introduce you to Trina Johnson, who's our sponsor for the next segment, who is a pioneer. Trina, I hope this draws inspiration to all the challenges that you're facing. She just launched a retail store in Manhattan,
CBD,
New York.
For
Yeah,
CBD.
for CBD.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
it's a tough market. So yeah.
Mm,
So
mm.
Trina, would you like to say something? And I'll bring Grover in, and we'll bring your session in. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. It's so amazing to be here and to be the day that you were speaking to. It's just really inspiring and meaningful, and just so much good history to remember, let alone for like all of us women. And I just feel that every day, being the founder of Blue Forest Farms and in the CBD hemp world for 5 years, and just paving like an entire industry and all the roadblocks that have come with that, and just, changing a lot of propaganda around how we view and think this about this plant, and also so much around how minorities have carried the struggle and the just to get us to where we are at this point. And I have so much honor for that in the industry, and super excited to be here in New York City.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for
wonderful.
being here too. Thank
Yes.
you.
So Grover, Reginald, Sebastian, we'll go, and Anessa, if you would like to say something quick before we go to session 2. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead,
Reggie.
Reginald. And thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for addressing us today. It's such an honor. It's such a treat. It's good to hear more accuracy about Madam C.J. Walker's legacy and her real impact on entrepreneurship, African American history, and American history, which is always going to be synonymous, but people don't want to recognize that. But it is the case. And the entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial spirit that I have within me has a lot to do because of people like she and so many other people. And she was a front runner to tell people, hey, you can create your own opportunities. It's not going to be easy, but with the work and the determination, it's possible. So it is very inspiring to hear this. And that's what keeps me in the business of creating my own opportunities and helping others who want to create their own.
Mhm.
And especially within the African American community, like kings and queens, for which this month is dedicated to. And I want to do everything I can to help my kings and queens as well. But I digress. The original point is, thank you so much for addressing us. This is wonderful and it's very much needed. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
thank you. Grover?
Mute, you're mute.
Yes, I too was inspired just listening to the presentation. Being the product in the first semester of college and went to the HCBU in North Carolina, my eyes were open, my ears were open, and everything else. And as a result, I learned to really take my talent to be in service. I left school and went to Kenya, East Africa as a Peace Corps volunteer. And there I learned a whole lot because I was there alone and learned the culture, learned the people. And so they were no different than anybody else in the world. And as a result, I came back and went to grad school and went to corporate America and retired from corporate America and still provide a lot of service. And even right now, my whole emphasis is service. Educating younger people and giving back. In fact, last night I just wrote a letter to my college class, excuse me, about giving back. This is a negative, but it's not meant to be. As a class agent for my college, the men just don't give back. It's sad, but it's a true story. The women are holding up the banner and they're doing everything financially and leadership and a lot of these men, and again, it doesn't sound negative, but I try to inspire them, giving back. They were on an athletic scholarship, but yet they graduate, went out and earned a living and still earn a living and don't give back. So my letter, and this is comical, I mentioned January 1, 70 million Americans got a 5.9% increase, and they were in that group. And so my point was to encourage them out of that 5.9% to give some back to the college that they went to, that the younger people may have the same opportunity that they had and that they can grow beyond what we ever even thought of. And they can, and they will if we support them. And that was my emphasis. But to share that with, we wrote a book, my family and I started writing by myself, but I was being selfish and decided, hey, this is too selfish. I'm from a family of 14 siblings, 14 of us. I was the first in the family to go to college. I was number 8 in the birth order and didn't have a dime to go to school. And the Caucasian doctor that I worked for during the summer loaned my mother $1,000. And that's how much tuition was when I went to college. And of course, when my son went to college and he went to a major school in North Carolina, it was like $37,000. I don't know where the money came from, but my retirement is no longer. But he's a lawyer in DC and enjoying life and with a family. But the point is, we can't look to ourselves. We got to look to see what we can help others do. And as a result, by helping others, we'll help, then we grow in that aspect. And I also been doing a fundraiser for my college, Johnson C. Smith University. And I've been doing it for 30-something years. And basically what I do is I buy pecans from a grower and I resell them to buyers. And mostly in Jersey where I grew up at and elsewhere if they want to buy them. But the whole idea is not look to see what I could do for myself, but what I could do for others. And as a result, I'm going to be blessed. And I've been blessed to help the Kenyan pastor. And when I went back to Kenya in the year 2000, January, as a pastor who studied here in Atlanta, Georgia, had gone back home. But he didn't have any resource to help himself with the church or even his family. So I started a nonprofit and raise money to support him financially as well as help him get a vehicle, because he had polio as a kid, and so therefore he couldn't walk. One leg was shorter than or longer than the other, and getting around, even if he was normal in walking, you can't walk the whole country of Kenya or the city he lived in. So he needed a vehicle. So I raised money, and I got my church to give some money, and went to Kenya, gave him $17,500 to buy a car, a truck actually. And so he wanted me to go out with him to buy a truck, but you know, you just don't do that. You give people money, you let them make the decision how it's going to be used. Because I mean, here's my thinking, it's kind of silly, maybe selfish. If I give him $17,000 to go out with him to buy a truck, and the truck breaks down, what is he going to say?
It's always
So
the case.
I declined to do that. So,
Thank
but
you.
the vehicle is running well, and it's broken down a couple of times, but I sent him money to get it fixed, and the Lord is still blessing me, and that's the whole point. All my family, 10 of us got college degrees, and again, believe me, we were born on a cotton plant. Well, it wasn't a plantation. It was a farm. My dad tried to farm as a farmer and living on somebody else's land. If you know anything about the country,
Yeah.
farm. You cannot make a living farming on somebody else's property. You
No,
just
and
can't.
that was the point.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and,
Grover, I really appreciate that. And thank you for supporting and participating. We are running out of time.
Great story.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a great story. And he's written a book, and
Yeah.
we're talking about that at 1 o'clock
Right,
today.
right,
So we're
right.
excited. Thank
Right,
you,
right.
Grover. You're always a blessing
Right,
to
right,
us.
right. Thank you so much.
And to the community.
Mhm,
We
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
So Anessa and Rona, do you want to say something to Madam CJ Walker before we move to our wellness segment? Yeah.
Yes, hi, very nice to meet you. I think I'll be very different, not because I look different or because I'm younger, but because I will share super quick in 2 minutes my whole life and the reason why I understand root of the causes in African-American community or in general, what's going on in the world. So I came from Lithuania over 13 years ago in Chicago, which is, we know Chicago so well for a lot of different reasons. And what happened is I had to go through a lot of struggles in my life. I had to get punched 1,000 times and to get up 1,001 and say, I'm going to do it again and I'm going to make this happen, because I knew in my heart what I am and what I have to make it happen. So I started in very challenging situations in my life. So I know what pain feels. I'd been beaten up 1,000 times. So in order to know pain and then stay still a good person and say, I'm not going to stereotype this, I'm not going to become a victim of my own situations because I simply was a good person and trying to be helpful for everybody, I just decided that eventually one day when God's going to give me power, I'm going to be able to make the change in the world. And that day did came. So my mother got diagnosed with cancer. I'm a holistic health expert. We did rejected chemo and radiation for personal reasons. I just believe that nature has a lot to offer, and I decided to choose nature instead of, pharmaceutical route for first time. And then we start receiving my company in Nestle's hemp company, which is we are CBDA full spectrum hemp products on the market. We are the first CBDA actually globally that I actually created first biological soil. In fact, I was following the microbes from Africa to create my biological soil because Africa has the best roots and the best knowledge. I just love that place so much. So long story short is when I start creating the funds, I said, okay, this company is going to go crazy. They're going to make a lot of money. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a change in the world. And that's what I've been doing since then. For the last 5 years, I never slept a day in my life. I work 7 days a week, 16 to 18 hours a day on average. Days are booked from early morning until midnight. Last night finished at 12:30, woke up 5:30. So long story short is, I personally want to say one thing. A lot of us have intention. Some of them want to have intention. Some of them would like to have intention, but not so many people really go on the ground and focus. What is the root of the cause these people are on the street? Why these people are beaten up? Why these people not leaving the Southside Chicago? Where the issues are, okay? The Black Lives Matter community sounds an amazing idea, but when I spent the whole Christmas with the African community on the streets, visiting each of the African American person, say, where is your issue? I want to know your story. I want to document your story. I want to understand where the problems are. Those people not getting help. Like, we need to really focus where is the root of the cause by really reaching them, really understanding the root of the cause, not just what's written on piece of paper. So what I'm doing here in this world, since I've been attacked by human traffickers and you name it, I decided when I am making all this money, and that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go and fix everything. And that's what I'm doing. I'm working with the shelters in Chicago. I'm going under bridges. You can see me. That's how I spend my Christmas. And my family don't see me because I'm spending Christmas on the street, trying to understand what the problems are, why these people can't leave, why we have all this money that we're supposed to help these people, but we donated and the help is not there. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm undercover changer. I don't brag myself, so I don't go out much and don't see things. I just go and do it. That's what I do.
And we applaud you for that. And is any of your family, because that's pretty close to Ukraine, is anybody, this must be dear to your heart. My goodness me. Yes.
It is. It's very sad. I actually last night was speaking with my really close friend and I heard the bomb while I was FaceTime, like the bomb landed next to her house. You should see her, like the things we're going through right now. And that's another thing, like I decided, like a lot of companies come in and create a GoFundMe that is completely like, no, like that is not even going for the real cause. So everything, a lot of people say it's supposed to help, but it's really, who is really running it? Who is really trying to operate and make money from this? So I'm just like, enough is enough for everything. We have to go and make the change. All good people need to come in the one boat and say, this is the direction we're gonna take, and this is what we're gonna do. Because what happens, yes.
For that thought, we're coming back to you. We're coming back to my cousin actually is in London, and she said that they're 3 hours away from Ukraine, and you can see it like fireworks above the Buckingham Palace. So it's serious out there in Europe. But I want to talk to you about that as well. So Rana, I'm so excited. Green, we got you last. So we spelled matcha tea wrong, but please tell us all about matcha tea, and I'll bring the wellness segment out in a minute. But just right now, we're only commenting on Madam C.J. Walker's presentation. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Yeah, I just have to say I was so wowed by that presentation, and I agree that was some car. She was in an electric car way before. But that was incredible, and it's so inspiring to see. And so thank you for sharing that. I had no idea, and I'll be looking out for the products as well. But it was really, really insightful and inspirational. So thank you for sharing that.
So,
all right,
we're gonna have to wrap up
we're
now.
going to wrap up the segment.
Thank you. Don't be conscious of her book. Her book, I mean, you know, it's a groundbreaking book. And you need to read it. Yeah, you need to get and read your book.
Wonderful.
On our own ground. And, you know, I say this, and as we're wrapping up this segment and understanding, you know, you look at what leaders and ancestors like Madam Walker faced and what she decided. She decided that she was going to live her life on her own terms. And the interesting aspect about her in this that I find is that there were no leaders that she could turn to. She depended upon her own vision and understanding of what she could be. And, you know, and there was no person that, you know, that gave her the vision to train a sales staff of over 100 people. She came from a slavery condition and background. So you wonder that you got to know that she was incredibly brilliant, you know, because then she was like probably a sponge. She absorbed everything around her and she put it to good use in terms of what could happen, the people, the experiences. And then she found a way to make people, our community and our condition and people's lives of humanity better through the course of it. I'm encouraged by this. Your great-great-grandmother, Alelia, she was amazing, and you are too. And so I just need to thank you incredibly for your presentation today. And we will reach out to help move your book, to hear the story and to share the story, because at the end of the day, it's the richness in our history and legacy that will make us the powerhouses that your great-great-grandmother was, and what it means that way.
And I'll send you an email as a follow-up. Thank you so much.
You're in our space.
You're in
we're not letting go.
We're not letting go.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Leave us with a good inspiration quote, and then we'll close out the session. You're watching Brightside Global Trade TV. If you watch this on Instagram, Facebook, I know everybody's going to love the segment. Please buy the book, take a picture, so we know that you're listening. And as you know, we are all about business empowerment. So leave us with something strong, and then you can stay as long as you want. But we're moving to our health and wellness segment.
Well, I'll just say this. Yes, she would say, don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. You have to get up and make them for yourself.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's
well,
right.
Thank you
That's
so
exactly
much.
right.
And this concludes us.
Thank
and
you.
all the links will be available on
appreciate you.
brightsideglobaltrade.org.
Also, thank you, Juliet, for putting us in touch with her.
Okay, I'll bring